Okay, the recording is started.
Thank you. Good evening, all. Welcome to our first meeting for 2023. My name is Miss Antoine. I am the chair for the Parks and Beautification Committee, and I am so happy to have you here as we are about to start a new year with beautiful events, and we are about to start with our plan for the year. And one of the plans that we are having was to start the beautification of our neighborhood. So I would like to call this meeting to order. I would like to ask you to please mute um, yourself and unmute when if you have a question. We are about to start with a presentation with Mr. Jason Stein from New York City Parks, from New York City Department of Parks and Recreation. The purpose of this presentation today is to give you an overview, is an orientation for the stewardship program, which a lot of people ask for, and I am happy to present that to you. And on the agenda for today, as you can see, you received an amended agenda where we had to cut some of the items from the agenda because the presentation that you are about to have will be a 1 hour presentation. At the end of the presentation, all your questions will be answered and the committee board will follow up with you if there is more after today. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce to you Mr. Jason Stein from New York City Department of Parks and Recreation for the presentation on our stewardship program.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. Thanks in advance for attending and hearing what I have to say about environmental stewardship. So my goal here is to give you an overview of our program and where you might see yourself getting involved. So I'm gonna try to share my screen. So let's try it. Okay, does that look good? You see the
Yeah.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay, so yeah, my name's Jason Stein. I've been with the Parks Department for 15 years. I'm a certified arborist with a background in forest restoration. And what I do is I train and empower advanced environmental volunteers to be able to become community leaders, to lead environmental and greening projects in their own communities. So I want to tell you all about that. That program is called the New York City Parks Super Stewards. So we'll start with a inspiring quote. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. And that is the spirit that drives this whole program. And yeah, so this is a little bit of a long presentation. I'm going to actually I'll probably skip over a few things or go a little bit fast. Once I get talking, I can get a little chatty about this program, but I'll try to keep it reasonably short. So let's start by taking a bird's eye view of trees in the city. It's no surprise to anybody here that most of the city is a built artificial environment, but a surprising amount, as much as 30 or 40% is green of some kind. And we can mean a lot of different things when we talk about a green space, from something that's landscaped, it's green and it's mowed and it has infrastructure in place, but we also have a lot of natural areas as well, which is a really important part of our program. Nature in the city takes many forms, from over 6,000 acres of forest. If an acre means nothing to you, then what I find helpful to visualize it is an acre is about the size of an American football field without the end zone. So over 6,000 of those actual wild forest. We've got over 1,000 acres of grasslands. One great example of that, if any of you haven't been out to the nature trails behind the Marine Park Nature Center on Avenue U, stunning, beautiful grasslands, salt marsh. We've got, of course, gardens. We've got a lot of street trees, and that's a big thing that I want to talk to y'all about. And all kinds of things like that. Now, we've actually done a bunch of studies to assess health of the environment. If you wanted to actually ask a scientist, like, how is nature doing in New York City? This might be something along the lines of what they'd say. This was a kind of a topic for another meeting, another discussion, but we've done a lot of research into looking at the overall health of nature in the city, both natural areas and our street trees. And we actually have a surprising amount of like really fairly good, fairly healthy natural areas. Although, of course, many things are very stressed, given the stressors of the urban environment. Now, at the stewardship program, we're particularly interested in trees. That's not a coincidence. We actually developed or we grew out of the Million Trees campaign, if any of you remember that. I was actually a program manager for the Million Trees campaign. And when we planted the official millionth, we were rebranded into what we are now, which is Park Stewardship. Um, so we focus on nature in general, and but we still have this real focus on trees. And when we in Parks Department think about all the trees in the city, our urban forest, we divide our trees into three buckets. We divide them into our street trees, of which we have over 2/3 of a million. We know because we actually counted every single one. We also have our what this slide calls park trees. I would call landscape trees, trees that are in sort of the playground area, the landscape type parks. We count out all of those. There's over 143,000. And incidentally, just as of like last week, I think the New York City street tree map, really cool interactive online map about the urban forest, now features those. So if you're ever in your park and you're like, oh man, that tree is beautiful. What is that? You can actually use this map and figure that out. And not only that, but you can figure out all kinds of other cool things about what is this tree doing for you and for your community. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then, of course, we have over 6,500 acres of wild natural forest area. So where did we come from? This map is meant to show, it's meant to sort of tell a story of the way that vegetation in New York City changed over a roughly 2 decade period before the Million Trees campaign. So the way to look at the map is that when you have green, there is no change in vegetation. Where you have yellow to red, that's a loss of vegetation, and blue is a gain in vegetation. Now, given that this is citywide, most of what this is representing is street trees. So you can see really, really significant overall loss of street trees. Probably what's happening there during that period, we're talking about the 80s and 90s, is, street trees come down. It's just that they weren't being replaced. Now, by contrast, since 2006 or between 2006 and 2016, we aggressively planted trees, and that's what this map shows. So during the Million Trees campaign, what you see here is where you see a spectrum of green, that's a gain in vegetation, and where you see orange, that's a loss in vegetation. So some neighborhoods still weren't so lucky, but certain areas in particular were. And you can see, especially like outer Brooklyn, in particular like East New York area, there were more trees planted in East New York than in most cities during that period. Very, very aggressive street tree planting policy. So why bother with this? Trees are cool, of course, but it's not just that. It's that trees are giving us essential services or eco services, we call them. Trees are actually public health infrastructure, and the city is now regarding them as infrastructure. Um, why is that? They do all kinds of things. They capture pollution in the air. It hits the tree's leaf before it hits our lungs. They clean the water. That's a whole complicated thing. But the term, if you want to look up more about this, is combined sewer overflow. It's this nasty phenomenon that our rainwater and our sewer systems feed into the same place, and they get easily overwhelmed when we get fast, like a flush of rain. And so end up getting sewage out in the water. Trees do a really, really good job of intercepting that. You never notice how like you're standing under a tree after a rain when the sun's come out, but you're still getting wet. That's all water that's been intercepted from the sewer system, that's helping keep our water clean. Um, all kinds of other things. There's crazy studies that show that like people that are sick in the hospital tend to recover faster if they can see a tree out their window. So huge, both physical and mental health benefits, huge potential energy savings if you have a tree, especially if it's properly placed, by your house, and they mitigate this thing many of you have heard of, urban heat island effect, the fact that in the summer, New York City is hotter than the outlying areas because the whole city is like a convection oven. Well, trees, not only do they cast shade, which helps us out, but they're actually like releasing water vapor uh, from underneath their leaves. So imagine 2/3 of a million just street trees doing that during those hot days. So we get real services from this. We estimate the total value at some crazy number over 100, almost $110 million. And what we also know, if as and what's depicted in this graph here on the upper right, is that the bigger the tree, the more we benefit from it. The bigger the tree, the more pollution it's ripping out of the air. And that becomes really crucial to us because as we work with stewards, to try to help, especially very young trees that are very vulnerable and stressed, survive that difficult childhood and try to get to be that large tree that can really help out the community. So now we'll take a very quick look at the Parks Department, and the purpose of this is kind of give you a sense of like sort of my shameless plug of why I'd like to try to recruit you all to become environmental stewards, so you get a sense of like what Parks is dealing with. Parks is the largest land owning entity in New York City, managing 14% of New York City, and we do that with just over a half of a single percentage point of the city's budget. So we are strapped. Um, we take care of a lot of different things, including 65 pools, 14 miles of beaches, over 500 tennis courts, 1,000 playgrounds, 51 recreation centers, 15 nature centers, 800 ball fields, 14 golf courses, historic house museums, monuments, kayak and canoe launches, dog runs, boating marinas, community gardens, green streets, world-class concerts, sporting events like the US Open. And we have not yet, in all of that, even gotten to 10,000 acres of highly, highly stressed natural areas like forests and wetlands. And then we still haven't talked about our 2/3 of a million street trees. So that's kind of why I do what I do, which is try to recruit, train, and support community leaders to help us fill those maintenance gaps so we can have a green city and we can all breathe some clean air and go swimming uh, without thinking twice about it. Um, Parks is organized into divisions. The stewardship team is under a division called Environment and Planning. And our mission is to restore, expand, and manage New York City's green spaces and natural areas to maximize their benefits for environmental and community health and resilience. Our division is actually very small. Parks at the height of summer, parks staffing fluctuates wildly with the seasons. So at the height of summer, when it's really busy, it's like maybe 5,000 staff. And our division is just like at its biggest, I think it reached 200 people. But we do a lot of really cool things. We've got horticulturalists like gardeners. We've got forest technicians, wildlife biologists. We've got seed collectors. We actually have a small team, is like two people that they collect wild seed from wild spaces in and around New York City. So we can not only grow our own trees, we can actually grow them from like New Yorker trees that have survived New York winters. And this map just shows our different locations. Like anything in parks, we're pretty scattered. But we have a native plant nursery in Staten Island. That's a nursery that grows plants for ecological restoration projects, like we're building a new wetland, we're building a new forest, or expanding the forest. By contrast, our nursery up in the Bronx is more of a horticultural nursery, so that's more like we want some new plants for the playground or the garden area. And then we have various offices in Queens. We at Stewardship are located in Long Island City. We're citywide. We work all over the city, but we're located in Long Island City. Additionally, we actually share a research station in Fort Totten, Queens, with the U.S. Forest Service. We can even like house visiting scientists and stuff like that. It's pretty cool. So that brings us to park stewardship. So I mentioned that we grew out of the Million Trees campaign, and when the Million Trees campaign really took off, it became very apparent that we needed to start to look at recruiting the community to help us steward especially young, vulnerable trees. And for park, we planted trees in a lot of different places, and we had a lot of help, including with the New York Restoration Project, Bette Midler's famous program, nonprofit. But for parks, most of the trees we planted were in streets and in natural areas. And so we started training folks to care for trees in those specific sites. So we'd have very site-specific trainings, and we came to call the street tree stewards care captains. That name was coined by an advertising firm that did pro bono work for parks. That was back, if you remember, the days when you'd see Million Trees banners on the subway and stuff. And then we came up with this program called the Natural Areas Volunteers, or Navigators, which is what you see on the right. That's basically volunteers performing what I would call a forest technician work, which basically means like removing invasive species. These are like super weeds that can cause real ecological harm, and replacing them with native trees. So um, we developed this model, and we still have it today in stewardship, which is called Engage and Empower. And the idea, most of our team, most of the stewardship team engages volunteers. We hold events all over the city, caring for street trees and natural areas all year round. There's no off season for us. Um, and the idea is to teach New Yorkers, like, you can touch your tree. It's okay. You're not going to get in trouble. You can dig in the earth and help to nourish the earth. Um, and um, and then the idea is that we host these projects all over the city, and at the end of the event, maybe one person hangs around. They're like, "Oh, I had a great time. When are you coming back?" And we're like, "I don't know. We're a small team. We're in the entire city. We cover 2/3 of a million street trees and 10 to 12,000 acres of natural areas. I don't know if we're going to come back anytime soon." But we're like, but we have this program where we can empower you to potentially lead these types of events on your own. We can train you. We can provide tools, resources, logistical, administrative, and outreach support. We can empower you to become a super steward, and that's where I come in. That's the program that I oversee. And the reason at the end of the day that we do this is that we know, based even on scientific research, that stewarded trees are more likely to survive. We have metrics that show, in the case of um, street trees that are not stewarded are significantly more likely to not live the longest, best life they can. Whereas trees that are being stewarded, even if that just means someone's weeding every now and then, picking the cigarette butts out now and then, putting up a sign saying, "Hey, please keep your dog out if possible," stuff like that, it really goes a long way. And if you think back to that chart that I showed you, the graph of the trees getting larger, that's the name of the game. If we can steward those trees through their childhood, basically, and get them so that they can sort of survive on their own, that's when they start helping us out. That's when they start making the difference of, like, maybe the kid down the block has a better chance of not growing up with asthma. Maybe we can go swimming, in Coney Island after a rainfall, stuff like that. So that's kind of the name of the game. So that brings us to the super steward. So um, the I asked a bunch of the some veteran stewards why they do what they do, and this is what some folks said. Melissa in Queens said, "Lending a helping hand has enhanced my knowledge of the local ecosystem and has strengthened my ties to the city's wilder spaces. This has been my way of communing with nature in the heart of the city." Next, we have Amy, a street tree care captain in Brooklyn. She said, "You know that change does not happen overnight, especially changing a neglected neighborhood or street into a beautiful one. You will work hard to beautify, see that work trampled or mistreated, become disillusioned and saddened, but you will do it again and again until one day you wake up to see that the trash is nearly gone, pet owners are watchful, the trees and flowers are healthy, neighbors are proud, and your place in the world is being transformed." So, like, they just got started with this local, it was just like a couple neighbors, and they formed this tree care club, and it's still going strong to this day. And what's really cool is that Amy, who was one of the founders, she's since moved, but the group still exists. They've actually gone through several generations of, like, new leaders, and they become super stewards. So we train them, we give them, all the knowledge that we can about, state of the art arboriculture. We help them with tools, we help them with logistics. We just recently, with this group, we were able to help get them a pile of mulch to do a tree event. and it continues on. Okay, next we have Paul. He's a forest steward, so that's the navigator. So I'm going to show you some pictures of this, but he spends a lot of his free time alone in the woods, cutting out problem species, these superweed invasive species. Um, he said, "I like being free to work at my own pace and on my own schedule. You do not have to take a defined slot or anything like that, which can be tough with many volunteer situations. It is almost as if there are no limits to what we can do." And then last, we have Kay, just a passionate tree lover in Brooklyn. She said, "I am Irish. My ancestors worshipped trees. Trees are part of my DNA." So the Super Stewards program consists of these 4 different tracks. And to be totally honest, it gets a little confusing. There's all these different names, these terms. That's kind of my fault. I mentioned I was program manager with Million Trees. I helped create some of these programs, and I wanted to keep the names when it became the Super Stewards program. So we think of the Super Stewards program as a network consisting of these 4 different tracks. And the tracks are different types of trainings that volunteers can get depending on what they're interested in. So we have our street tree care captains, or basically citizen arborists, tree workers. Now we're not climbing up trees, and we're not necessarily pruning trees, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. There's tons of great work that you can do to help keep trees healthy and alive, as a citizen arborist, as a care captain. Then there's the navigators and natural areas volunteers. The the professional term for this would be a forest technician. These are folks that work in natural areas, um, helping to restore them. Examples, I mentioned Marine Park has had a lot of ecological restoration done, both wetland and forest restoration. But another example that might be a little bit closer for y'all would be Ecology Park in Patagat Basin. We have some navigators that work there. So they actually get special access. They can go on their own time and help us keep that green space healthy. Additionally, we have, oops, sorry about that. Additionally, we have um, trail maintainers. This is a program that's really cool, or a track that's done in conjunction with the nonprofit Natural Areas Conservancy, and supported by the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference. We train folks to basically adopt a hiking trail, and commit to like hiking it each at least once per season, and reporting back to parks. Be like, "Hey, parks, there's a new party spot. You should really come check it out, and take care of it." Or, "Hey, parks, there's a tree down, it's blocking the path." We often don't know, we won't know about it. Stewards will know about it much sooner than we do. And as a trail maintainer, there's a system where you can plug that information right into parks. And additionally, we have this program called Shorekeepers, where we're training volunteers to be like citizen scientists helping to restore coastal wetlands. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you some images of these 4 things. So here's an example of the care captains, the street tree, basically citizen arborists. This is a mother-daughter duo working on a high-need tree, a young, vulnerable tree. Here's an example of a navigator pulling out a problem species from a natural area. It doesn't look like much, but if left to its own device, this species could quickly degrade an ecosystem. It's the same plant that you always see growing in empty lots. Why? Because empty lots are full of building debris, which is actually toxic to plants. Um, so it's the kind of thing a well-trained eye can really help this green space turn into the best form of nature that it can be. Here's an example of a shorekeeper. This picture is taken in Soundview Park in the Bronx, which is a beautiful, beautiful restored wetland. And here they're just helping to install some protective fencing. And here's some hiking trail maintainers hiking their trail, helping be Parks' eyes on the ground. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go into each of those 4 tracks in a little bit more depth. I'm just going to show you a whole bunch of pictures. And my idea is I'm hoping to possibly inspire some of you and also help to give you a sense of like what things we offer. There are many stewards that take multiple trainings. Everyone is totally welcome to do that. At the same time, it's not a bad idea if you are interested in this kind of thing, to take a look at this and consider what might be your cup of tea. Or even if it's not you, if you have a neighbor, let's say you have a neighbor that's like always like gardening in their tree beds. This might be a really good fit for them. Or you have a neighbor who who just loves to go out and explore nature areas in Jamaica Bay. There might be a really good fit for that. But again, the key of all this, our stewardship team in general hosts volunteer events all over the city. And we'll give you, we're going to give you access to that or let you know how you can find it. Just Google Park Stewardship. But then where my small team, the Super Stewards, comes in is training folks to be able to lead this on their own. So that's the idea to have in mind. So I'm gonna go into this. I can like actually literally talk for hours about this, so I won't try to keep you too long. But just tell you some stories. This is a cool this is in Brooklyn. This is in Sunset Park. It's actually Greenwood Cemetery, the green at the back there. The story behind this is a couple neighbors got together and were just hanging out and having some drinks. And by the time the drinks were gone, they had actually designed this tree guard themselves. They were able to get it approved by the Parks Department. They were able to source the materials through mini grants. There's tons of money available to help community groups like this. And eventually, they threw a block party where they got the street shut down. They had kids out, they had pizza, and the kids helped build these beautiful tree guards. And it makes a huge difference if you go on this block. Their trees are much bigger, healthier, faster growing than the surrounding community. Some businesses get involved in tree care. There's actually some research that suggests that having trees outside businesses tends to attract more customers and have them linger longer. This is a cool image of a custom-made tree guard. It's in pieces because it's modular. So like if the edge gets dented, it can be replaced without the whole thing needing to be taken out. And the idea of this is a community group in Queens that they're caring for their local park. What they realize is that the trees protect the park. Next time Hurricane Sandy comes rolling in, if you don't want your park destroyed, like when a tree smashes it and it's closed for 3 years, it's in your interest to have healthy street trees around it because trees are mostly communal beings. They protect each other, and the street trees they're the ones that are gonna take the brunt of the wind. Obviously, any opportunity to get kids involved in nature is a win. Speaking of which, many care captains are educators. So what I always say is like, if you're a teacher or you work with students and kids in some kind of capacity, and you're like, I would love to get my students outside, physically active, giving back to the community, doing something creative without signing a single permission slip, chances are you can do that with the trees right around your school. And in this case, this is a middle school green team. This is in like South Slope area in Brooklyn. Um, and they built that tree guard, they put that mulch, they planted those plants. And what's really cool is the surrounding neighborhood has been emulating what these kids have been doing. Um, Care captains also work on helping give trees some room. The tiles and the bricks in tree beds, believe it or not, are not good. We need more surface for like basically water to percolate into trees. Not to go all into this, but like remember, I think it was a tropical storm Ida recently, where all these people in Western Queens um, drowned in their own basement apartments. Think about that for a second. Why? Because there wasn't enough places for the water to go. So that's part of the fight with street trees is giving them enough space. The image on the right is a case where the steward was actually able to take a bunch of concrete that was illegally dumped in there, take it out, and give that tree some room. Um, this is a really cool image that I'm really proud of. Um, this is Jaden's ginkgo tree. Who's Jaden, you might ask? Jaden is a little boy that lives in that building. He might be looking out at his tree in this image. Um, Now, I ask you, do you see dog waste and nasty stuff in that tree bed? No. Why? I would argue because it's Jaden's ginkgo. Now, folks like will not necessarily listen to the Parks Department signs that are vaguely threatening, like, hey, you're going to get in trouble. You get fined if you let your dog use this green infrastructure as a bathroom. It's true. It's not, it's like technically against the law. But have you ever seen anyone get fined? You ever heard of anyone get fined? I sure haven't. On the other hand, what you know is that the power of community can be much, much greater, because as folks are walking down the street and they're like, I really don't want to deal with my dog's waste. And I'm a dog owner, I get it, but um, they're gonna look over their shoulder before like the entire community gives them the stink eye because they just did something nasty on Jaden's Ginkgo. That's like the power of this grassroots community focus that Super Stewards can provide. That the city, from a city official's perspective, we only sort of dream that we could have. Um, Stewardship can be creative. Check out this really beautiful tree guard designed and created by an artist with Parks' blessing. And it's really sturdy. It's lasted for years. Just a image of some other street tree care captains at work, really organized one on the left with the sign-in sheets and the snacks. On the right is a really cool thing. It was a care captain who works with developmentally disabled adults and created a program called the Tree Rangers where they can get promoted from like a corporal to sergeant based on their tree work. And he's told this story several times that one of his participants is a nonverbal adult, and after doing this work she started to actually seem to like try to communicate to people. Something about helping trees survive and thrive, just changed her spirit. um, and of course, speaking for the trees, you can get pretty creative with tree bed signs, from the expensive prefabricated stuff on the left to the pizza box with a Sharpie on the right. The one thing to know is you never want to impale a tree sign into the tree or wrap it around the tree. There's various reasons for that, and we have a specific training for these care camps where we talk a lot more about that. And a big thing that we do also is help stewards to access mulch. Mulch is one of the best things you can do for a tree. It basically like simulates the conditions of a forest floor where there's like a blanket of organic material. Um, by attending our care captain training, you become a care captain, a super steward care captain, and then you're eligible for one of these toolkits um, to help get your tree care started. What if you're in a situation where you're like, oh, I actually want to get my block association. I have like 12 neighbors that want to all come out and do it. And we want to do like a spring tree cleaning day, but I don't have enough tools. Let us know, and with enough forewarning or advance notice, we may be able to give or loan you tools. I actually have a small team, and that's a big part of what they do is they drive all around the city and help volunteers get the supplies and logistical support they need to support their projects. The care captain training is, I'll talk a little bit more about this, but it's available both in person and as a webinar. That's like a COVID thing, the webinars. Um, and we actually have we have several coming up, and including actually our first ever one in Spanish is in 2 days. Which, by the way, if you know anybody, we're trying to recruit people for that. So if you know anyone, please spread the word. But that stuff's all available on our website. Additionally, though, I mentioned we can do it in person, and we even do it by request. Again, if you have a block association, like half a dozen of your neighbors really want like a hands-on lesson of how to care for their trees, we may be able to set something up for you. So that's the street tree component. Now, the other three tracks are all for natural areas. The navigators or natural areas volunteers in the forests, shorekeepers working on our shores and our coastal wetlands, and then our trail maintainers hiking. So I'll go through these a little bit faster. But here's an example of a navigator at work. He gets trained to identify plants. This is a good program for someone who is really into plants. The plant identification can be challenging, but it can be very, very rewarding to be able to walk into a forest and see plants interacting almost like characters in a play or something, or in a movie. There's like the good guys and the bad guys, and things working in different ways. And that's what navigators learn, is what plants we want and need to have in a healthy functioning forest, and which plants actually threaten that. It can be a very kind of mind-blowing thing for folks to hear that not all plants are good for the environment. But there you go, not all plants are good for the environment. Some plants are really, really bad for the environment, and those are the ones that we go after. Here's an example of one of those plants, infamous porcelainberry vine. It's that gray, purple, spaghetti looking stuff. This navigator has simply cut through it as it's been climbing up trees and starting to rip them down. The same plant here is working up a recent planting area, and in this case, what the navigators are doing is they're stopping it in its tracks. Just a few snips with a pair of hand pruners can prevent ecological catastrophe 20, 30 years down the road. And incidentally, I kept talking about the Million Trees campaign where we planted all these new forests. This is an example. This is what a new forest looks like about maybe 3 to 4 years after planting. Here's a before and after picture of a steward rescuing a tree. The tree, what looks like a tree on the left, it's actually a problem species, a bittersweet vine, really, really bad species of vine that's out of sync with the local environment. We cut it off, and you can see barely anything was left of that tree. That poor little sapling was surely doomed without this guy's intervention. And if you look in the image on the right, if you look to his left, you see like a lump of green. That's another tree that needs his help. And that's what navigator work's all about. You don't see any vines clogging up the tree on the right. Why? Because that tree has been able to survive uh, being very young, and now it's shading out its competition. So it's not that our native plants can't hold their own. It's just that they are facing a lot of threats of human-made disturbances, and they need a lot of help to get themselves established. The arrow, and there's a couple more before and after pictures. The arrow is meant to show you like before and after, like in this case, the twin trees. There on the left, that's an invasive species of rose, believe it or not. Not like the rose you can buy in the store. This is like a landscaping thing. It was actually planted by transportation authorities who were trying to create a crash and glare buffer in highways. Because if you drive your car off the road, that's going to slow you down better than anything. But it escaped and it chokes out ecosystems. So if you look on the left, imagine a little acorn falls in there and tries to start its life. It's doomed. It's a death sentence. On the other hand, bring in a couple of super stewards, or in this case, one super steward who led a small group with his buddies, and they took it out, and now the forest can regenerate itself on the right. This is another example. The arrow shows you this downed limb. This is an individual, a retired accountant in Outer Queens. She took out these invasive vines, and when she did, she found what you see on the right is a native stand of sumacs growing horizontally as they struggle to try to escape from this death sentence of the vine infestation. And then 3 years later, those trees are now tall and they're shading out their competition and everything works. And this is a kind of I've been to ecological restoration conferences where folks will say like, it's not possible, it doesn't work. You need to use herbicides, you need to use power tools that are burning fossil fuels. But this is the proof is in the pudding. This was done by a single individual with just a pair of hand pruners, and she restored this this patch of forest, and the forest is now regrowing itself. So that's what Navigator Work's all about. Navigators get a toolkit. Navigator training is a two-part field session with us. So 2 different days spent in the field with us, learning to identify plants and remove them and be safe. And upon completing it, this is the toolkit. So Shorekeeper is a very similar program, but with a focus on wetlands. I'm going to give you a self-guided quiz. You can ask yourself, what park is in this image? Now, I realize that's like a ridiculously difficult question, but you might kick yourself when I tell you, if you look in the back and you see there's like some utility poles, that is the very end of Flatbush Avenue in Brooklyn. This is Marine Park. And so this is an example of a restored wetland. In this case, the steward is just helping with this protective fencing to help the planting. Here's a steward helping us with invasive species work in another restored wetland in Queens, back in Marine Park in Brooklyn. And just a picture of a training that we did in the Bronx years ago. And that same restored marsh in Soundview Park in the Bronx. Wetlands are critical infrastructure. They used to be thought that they were like wastelands, so oftentimes they're filled with trash. Actually, the kind of a dirty secret of New York City is a lot of our parks and outer boroughs that are near water are you're walking on the ground, you're like, oh, I'm just walking on the ground. No, you're actually walking on trash. It was a wetland. It was filled with trash, had topsoil put over it before anyone knew how important wetlands are. Now, after big storms like Hurricane Sandy, we know if you had a wetland in between your house and the water, you still have a house. We also know that wetlands are nature's filters. They are the pollution's filters. They're often the incubators for life. They're critical parts of nature. And in New York City, we squandered and lost over 90% of our original wetlands, and they cost about $1 million an acre to restore. Um, so so we've talked about the street tree care captains, navigators in forests, shorekeepers in the wetlands, and now we have the trail maintainers and hiking trails. And this is a really good option for folks that want to be in natural areas, but are like, I don't want to be just like bushwhacking in the woods. I want to have some sort of limitations. Maybe you're like if you don't feel confident about plant identification skills, which can take a long time to develop, this is a really good program. Basically, you'll work with our trails trainer. We have this guy named Josh. It's his full-time job is to train trail maintainers and basically maintain, like adopt and maintain a trail corridor. This involves things like invasive species removal, but simply on the corridor's edge. Um, it also involves some structural work, like helping to repair trails, helping to manage the overall trail network. Sometimes we actually close trails because trails can fragment the forest. We walk this tightrope wire of like getting people into nature to appreciate it while also keeping nature healthy enough so that there's something there to appreciate. So actually what you see on the right, it just looks like a mess. Those were actually all placed by people. It's like us trying to close this trail that used to lead to a party spot, disguise it, and let the forest reclaim it. And part of this training involves special access to some of Parks' information about trails, uh, training on how to navigate and monitor trails, stuff like that. Um, so that is the kind of the summary of the field component of what stewards are doing. Um, so now as we come to kind of the final part of this presentation, I'll talk about, I'll finish by talking about like what are the next steps if you are interested. But before that, I also want to kind of talk about another aspect of stewardship, which is something that you all are engaging in right now, simply by attending this meeting and by the generosity of your time of joining and listening to what folks have to say, which is organizing community. And the idea for this is that when it comes to nature in New York City, environmental justice is social justice. They cannot be disentangled. So like my thought is like, even if you're just like you spend an hour once a month picking up cigarette butts out of street trees only because you're like they're nasty and I don't like to see them, by default, you may well be helping some kid not get asthma because you're helping the street tree to be healthier. Um, so environmental justice is social justice. Um, so here's some examples of the ways that super stewards are embracing this philosophy through their community organizing work. On the left was a really cool event that a bunch of stewards in the Upper West Side of Manhattan did for many years. It was like almost like a holiday where they'd get a bunch of like tools and materials donated, and all kinds of people would come out. Basically, anyone in the community could come by this event, get a free tree care toolkit, as long as they're willing to um, attend a quick demo of how to use it and help care for the trees. On the right is a very different. So on the left, that's like they're super organized. If you look closely, you see there's like elected officials in there. There's like corporate sponsors. Keep in mind these are community members. They're not getting paid for this. They have day jobs, but they're very organized. Um, this is like high level stewardship stuff. On the right is very much the opposite. Um, like both are grassroots examples, but on the right, the story was this guy in northern Manhattan, Inwood Hill Park, and he would go on a hike every Saturday morning. and he was really tired of seeing the trash in the woods. And he's like, "Hey, Parks, there's trash in the woods. Can you please take care of it?" And Parks is like, no, sorry. To be honest, we can barely keep up with the barbecue area, and our packer trucks, the Parks garbage trucks, don't even fit on the paths to get up in the woods. So like, good luck." Um, and so he got tired of seeing it, and so he started bringing. One day he brought a garbage bag on his hike. Next week, a friend joined. The next week, a friend brought a friend. And in a 2-year period, they removed almost 70 industrial sized garbage bags of trash from the woods. And amazingly, they recycled 2/3. This guy actually convinced his super in his building to let him bring the trash back and recycle 2/3 of it. I just think it's hilarious. Like, imagine having that conversation if you live in a building with a super. Imagine having that conversation with your super. Like, can I please bring trash from the park back and sort it here? Crazy, and but he did it. Here's an example. Both of these images are the same organization. It's a nonprofit founded and led by two super stewards. And in this case, they didn't start this program be, out of a concern for environmental justice. They started this nonprofit as a way to provide positive activities for young adults in a rough area in Staten Island, Tompkinsville, Stapleton area. Um, she is a lawyer professor who gave that up to run this nonprofit, and he is a retired police officer. And together they do all kinds of cool things like literacy programs and this and that. But what they also do is extensive street tree care work. The reason is it's really logistically attainable for them. They get free training from parks. They get tons of free supplies, gloves, tools, hats, swag to give their kids. And the cool thing is when it comes to street trees, you don't need special permission from parks. You don't even need to attend our training. You should, in order to make sure you're doing the right thing. Some stewardship activities can actually hurt trees. Tragically, some people thinking that they're helping trees actually hurt them, for example, by mounding mulch like a volcano up against it. But what's really cool is they can do this project anywhere. Like if we're trying to get some kid, some teenager to come out to a coastal marsh, it's really difficult. We're like, take two buses and a subway at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning. Like, good luck with that. But what they can do is they can set up the projects where the kids are. They can do street tree care on the path that the kids walk to go to school. So those kids will see it every day. So I offer that as an example of how, in this case, environmental justice is an expedient towards their goal of social justice, all for the purpose of ultimately bringing folks together. Some super stewards even will function as like neighborhood hubs where they will host their own trainings. We have a guy out in Bay Ridge that his neighbors are like, they don't do webinars. They're not going to come to one of our events, but they will go next door, like to the community center, and what he'll do is he does trainings, street tree care trainings there. So every couple of years, he's like, "Hey, Parks, hey, Stewardship, I need some more toolkits to give to my volunteers." And we're like, "Hey, when can we deliver them to you?" Here's just a cool, beautiful image, a native plant garden that after this guy beautified this, somebody else came and put a sculpture in there. Um, this is a image of a tree care event where the stewards managed to recruit. That's former Councilman Constantinides on the left, and the littlest one is his son. So that is just huge. Like, if you have those kinds of connections, people like that can get things done just as well as being able to identify plants, being able to dig in the dirt. In fact, this neighborhood, this is Astoria, has consistently gotten a lot of love in the city's budget for urban forestry. Coincidence? I like to think not. We help folks form organizations. In this case, this was a Friends of Bush Terminal Park. That's a really cool park. If any of you are out in the Sunset Park area, really cool, brand new park. And then this is a shout out to our friends and partnerships for parks. Um, and Citizens Committee for New York City. Partnerships for Parks, by the way, is part of City Parks Foundation. And these organizations, they exist to grow community or community groups. At Stewardship, with the Super Stewards program, our strength is really technical stuff with plants. So if you're a street tree steward and you're like, oh man, my tree is not looking healthy, I need some guidance. That is our bread and butter. On the other hand, if you're a street tree steward and you're like, my block association wants to increase its social media footprint. Now, that's not something we're so good at. To be totally honest, still can't figure out what the difference between Instagram and WhatsApp is. So I got nothing for you there. But these organizations have trainings for those types of things. So there's all the best idea is to cast a wide net and get support wherever you can get it. Additionally, both of these and other programs consistently offer mini grant programs. There's thousands, tens of thousands of dollars out there to support your efforts. You wanted to get those really fancy, expensive tree cards. Maybe you can do that. Maybe there's grant money out there. You want to get a job box for your community garden and a bunch of street tree tools that you can then access anytime. There might be money out there for it. So just some stuff that's good to know. So I'm going to wrap this up in just a few moments, but this is the part where I sort of bribe you to become a super steward, basically like let you know some of the things you get by virtue of doing the super steward trainings. You're eligible for tools and supplies. I showed you some of those toolkits. Exclusive access to trainings and events. Super Steward events, we host trainings that are generally not available to the public. It's so that we can specifically create this community and network of super stewards. Examples are we did a webinar on plant communication, tree pests, stuff like that. Logistical, administrative, and outreach support. We can help grow your event, and direct access to parks experts. We're basically ongoing consultants for arboriculture and ecological restoration issues. Here's just some images of some of our trainings. This is a winter tree ID walk we did, forest ecology walk on the left, tree pest class with a state forester there on the right. A really cool thing too, COVID has been in the way of this, but we sometimes host in non-pandemic times quite large events, and including an event where we host the entire incoming freshman class of the College of Arts and Sciences of NYU to do tree care in East New York. I mentioned we planted tons of trees there, so we're like, you know what, students, you just got to New York, you need to get your butt out here and take care of some trees. And it's such a huge event. It's 1,400 students over 2 days, so 700 students each on each day. It's so many that we recruit super stewards to help us staff it. And so in this image on the left, that's actually a super steward working alongside park staff, teaching these kids what to do. So it's an opportunity for some leadership development, networking, and just kind of a fun adventure. And similar on the right, that's a steward helping us with a natural area cleanup day, helping to lead a large group of volunteers. And I've been mentioning grants. We actually have a mini grant program as well. We wrapped up our most recent one a few months ago, where we had awarded up to $1,000 each to 14 different super steward groups to support their grassroots environmental stewardship efforts. Additionally, we host networking events in person or via webinar in COVID times. That's a chance for folks to get to know each other, to learn, have some fun snacks. So this program's totally free, but we do ask a few things. One is that we ask a general commitment uh, to put in 12 hours of stewardship a year, and to reflect that via reporting. And so that could look like many things. That could be an hour of doing a cleanup once per month. That could be a couple hours each season, whatever that looks like for you. And we're not like holding anyone to the fire. It's more like a request, like um, that we want to make sure that we're giving what limited time and resources we have to the places where it's really going to grow these grassroots community efforts. So that's what we're looking for, is about a dozen hours per year, in whatever form that looks like, in whatever track, and to represent that through reporting. Reporting is really, really important. It's really boring, and this is the least exciting thing of anything I have to say, but it's really important because if you're ever like, I think the city hall should know about the amazing work my neighbors are doing. The way for them to know that is possible, but the way is if that work is being reported. Um, and if we can generate data that proves it. And in terms of street trees, the way to do that is the New York City street tree map. If you haven't seen this, you should definitely check it out. Just Google NYC street tree map. And you can log in and click that you're a care captain. Yeah, you can log your work. And I mentioned as of just a few weeks ago, you can now even look at your trees in your landscape parks. It's really cool, actually. You can even not only see what the name of your tree is, you could see if someone's been stewarding it, but you can also see the ecosystem services. You can see like, oh, we can estimate this tree removed, let's say like 500 pounds of pollution out of the air last year, stuff like that. For natural area stewards, the reporting takes the form of a smartphone app, which is what you see on the right. Or for folks that don't like using that, we also have a desktop friendly reporting form on the left. This is like, oh, hey, Parks, I went out and I removed, 2 garbage bags of debris from the wetlands today, or I cut back this invasive vine and I freed up 3 baby sapling trees in the natural area in my park, stuff like that. So as we wrap up, the pressing question is, what are the next steps? Ultimately, normally I do this presentation as a webinar, usually the last Thursday of each month. So if you are, again, sorry for another shameless plug, but if you know folks that are interested, they just Google NYC Park Super Stewards. The link is on there. Um, and so anyway, so the training process is one, we ask folks to attend one of our general events. Just get a sense of like, what does street tree stewardship actually look like? What am I getting myself involved in? What does wetland stewardship actually look like? How is that even possible in New York City? Am I going to get washed away? Where could I even go to a forest to do forest stewardship or trail maintenance? Step 2, attend the Super Steward orientation. That is this right now. You have now completed this step. By the way, I don't care what order these are in. I'm not a stickler for the details. I just want to get people out and engaging with nature. Steps 3 and 4 are the actual trainings. Now the trainings are different for the different tracks, and this gets a little bit complicated. And if you have any questions, you can always just like reach out to me. The we are well, sorry, my point I was about to make earlier was that I mentioned I usually do this orientation um, every month as a webinar, which means I have all everyone's emails. But since I'm a guest of this community board meeting, what that means is I won't have your email. So the step is basically if you are interested, to let the community board know, and then they will relay the info back to me, and we'll link you up that way. If for some reason our paths don't cross, you can always find my information by simply Googling Park Super Stewards. But that's kind of the idea, to get linked up with these extra trainings. Um, so for care captains, for street tree stewards, the training can be simply just a webinar. Those are available on our website, open to the public, and we can also do them by request for groups, in person or by webinar. For navigators and shorekeepers, it's 2 sessions in the field, 2 different sessions, and at least one of those sessions will be a site visit, which means our team will actually work with you to identify a specific site for you to adopt. And it's pretty much the same with the trails, only you only need one session, where um, where our trail trainer will actually set up a one-on-one site visit with you. So again, to make these happen, after this session, simply email, correct me if I'm wrong, but email Miss Antoine, who will then like link you up with me, and we'll have your information. And and additionally, I'm going to send Ms. Antoine a bunch of information that she's going to forward along to you, so that you'll know how to reach us, where to find more information, where to get started. Um, so that wraps it up. I want to conclude by thanking you for just taking the time out of your evening to listen to what I have to say. I also want to thank Ms. Antoine and the community board for hosting me, and for helping to get our message out. We love working with stewards, and we love connecting people with nature, and seeing the amazing transformative effect that that can have on individuals and their communities. Um, so that's it. Thank you very much. My email is here, and again, you'll be receiving this information afterwards. So again, thank you very much. And I think now's time if anybody has any questions.
Yes, so I know that my internet is not stable today. So if you could see who raised their hand and just call them, that would be fantastic. I saw Miss Bennett that like first who raised her hand. I don't know if you have a question.
Yeah.
You can
No,
go
I
ahead.
said I put my email in the chat. That's where you can see it.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Great. Yeah, so I got your
Yeah, I put
email
it
there.
in.
Thanks.
So thank you again. If you have a question, please raise your hand, and so we can do that quickly. I know that you have a bunch of questions. You can ask them, and then I promise that very shortly, you will have all the information that Mr. Stein will send to me. So we'll combine them together, and Ms. Barton will send them to you. Yes, Ms. Bennett. Yes.
So in my area, which is Kings Highway, we have a lot of green spaces. Does that include the captainship there, cleaning them up, sprucing around?
Yeah, I think what you're probably talking about is what we call green streets, which was they're like gardens that are kind of installed into roadway infrastructures. And we don't work on those directly, but we can help to link folks up to the parts of parks that do, like the local parks gardeners and stuff like that. Additionally, you might have things, if you ever see a tree bed that has the curb cut out of it, like very deliberately cut out of it. That's what we call a rain garden or a bioswale. And those are really cool, cutting edge. It's basically an artificial wetland installed in your curb. And it's actually like a huge catch basin for rainwater. It's designed to capture stormwater. Those we're not dealing with so much because they're highly engineered, highly complex. There's a few things we can do, and we talk about that in our street tree training.
Mm-hmm. I have another question. I live on Kings Highway, and as you said, it's a roadway. And last year, they cut down a lot of sick trees. How do
Yeah.
I get how do I get those replaced? Because a lot of the beds are empty.
Yeah, totally. To replace a tree, you can make a 311 request. Um, if you know the closest address, that's really helpful. So if you're going to do that, like either write down the closest address, or you can also do this through the New York City street tree map by finding the tree and clicking on it and requesting it that way. One helpful tip is if there's a stump still in the tree bed there, please let them know
They
about that, because that can sometimes slow it down. It can be in the bureaucracy of parks, it can be a different contract to remove the stump before the new tree is put in. Um,
okay.
so that's the way is to 311 request.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
You see another hand, Mr. Daly, maybe? Daly, do you have a question?
If your maybe if your mic is not working or something, you can also try entering the question in the chat. And I'll also say that if for any questions that don't get answered, or if a question comes up later, again, we're gonna find a way to link up so that you can you can reach me. So
In the meantime, we can have Mr. Ted for question.
Yes, I was waiting for Mr. Daly, but I guess yes. I actually have a couple of questions. That's I am a little familiar with marine park because I do go there and do a lot of walking in the trails. Yes, so I've seen, I assume the stewards who are out there cleaning because I've seen them cleaning out there, and they told me, yeah, they're volunteers. And so basically, well, one of my question is, if you sign up to be one of those, do you can you select what parks you would like to work with, or do you assign them? 'Cause let's say I do a lot of walking here, Marine Park. Maybe I go to what they call it, Seaview
Pat,
Park, and so forth. Yeah, and of course around here in my neighborhood, it's Flatbush too. So I could identify different things, but I would not like, if I signed up, I would like to be something that's going to benefit basically my neighborhood and my borough. You know, not to sound selfish, but I think we do need a lot around here, especially I could right around what was it, the cemetery over here by Brooklyn Avenue and all that. They have a lot of trees that don't have tree beds or anything, and they people dump garbage around there. Right now, even on my block, during that million trees things, I applied. I asked for trees because there's a couple of empty tree beds, and they never planted anything. So I know what you mean when you say that people will dump and everything. Yes, because I do the one right in front of my house. I do treat it as a little garden. And even with the plants there, people dump over there. Every day I have to be cleaning out there. So I think if there was a tree there that I would like, I guess I'll try to request it again and see if I'm still alive to see a tree comes. But I definitely will be kind of interested in the trail maintenance. Okay, and then about the one that identifying the plants. I know it's not easy to identify certain plants, but is how safe it would be, like let's say with the poison ivies and all those things for people. What kind of training do you get to identify a specific poisonous plants?
yeah, so for the first part of your question, yeah, we want to work with stewards wherever you want to be. Now, we don't work in like like community parks that don't have natural areas like a playground, but we do work on the street trees outside of it. So we're
Yeah.
focused on street trees and natural areas. But within that, yeah, I mean, I always say the best street tree to care for is the one in front of your house. So we always want to meet folks wherever they are. So we're very flexible. And then what we do is we work with folks on an individual basis to find a site that is good for them. In terms of the training in natural areas, yeah, we definitely cover poison ivy for sure, um, and other hazards. And that's part of the training. Actually, the one of my field trainers is herself extremely allergic to poison ivy, so she takes it very seriously. Does that answer your question?
Yes, yes, and I do have a question because I know. Well, I do have an app that I downloaded that supposedly identify, the different plants. Uh, what do you think about those apps in terms of like, um, are they really, really reliable? Because I've noticed a couple of times that they didn't know certain plants,
Yeah,
but
totally. I have mixed feelings. I'm not a big technology guy, but
Mhm.
I am more and more convinced. There's one app in particular. It's called iNaturalist. I'll write it in the chat. It's really
Yeah.
good because it's a combination of it's not just like a robot, like AI. It's also human beings can look and um, add in their 2 cents. So I think iNaturalist is a really, really good one.
Okay, yeah, because I've been using picture this.
Yeah, yeah. I've
Mhm.
never used
I
that one. I'm a little old school. I don't, but so I don't know about that one. But I can reluctantly admit that iNaturalist seems to be the real deal. I've seen
okay.
my staff learn tremendous amounts from it. So
I naturalist spelled out as I the naturalist.
yeah, yeah, I put it in the
Okay.
chat. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
Yes. Okay. So I'm definitely would be interested in taking a couple of these trainings, especially with the street and the trail.
That's great. That's great. So, yeah, just you'll have our info, and we'll let you know a bunch of stuff that's coming up. And if you have any questions, you'll have my email as well. So just feel free to reach out.
Yes, I wrote on your email. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Mr. Stein. Any more question? I see Mr. Daly was back. I don't know if you still want to ask a question, Mr. Daly?
No. I'm
Oh, okay. Any more questions before we close with this session? Okay. So as I promised in the beginning, I will send you a bunch of information that I will receive after the training. And I'm sure that some of you will be interested, as Mr. Ted just said it, for future trainings. Then we'll follow up with you. If there is no question, nothing heard, I will say thank you to Mr. Jason Stein.
Thanks everyone.
Bye-bye.
Yes. I was saying that I have really bad internet connection today, but I wanted to ask for a motion to leave some part of the agenda for our next meeting. I want to ask for a motion to allow me to leave the unfinished business, new business, and the approval of the agenda for our next meeting, if it's okay. So I will need a motion if someone wants to make a motion for me to move those items for the next meeting on February 7th, because I see that the time is really, it's 8:48 already.
Can we do that? Okay. Adele
Someone
Bennett.
just said something?
Motion to, yes.
Adele Bennett, yes.
Yeah, who give the motion first?
Adele Bennett.
Okay,
Okay.
because I know that Ms. Button is taking note. My internet is so not stable. Excuse me if I can't hear you well, or if you can't hear me very well.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, but
Yes.
mine is unstable. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. So I will move those items for our next meeting, but for attendance purposes, I want to call two numbers just to know who are two numbers. 18, which who is that? The last two numbers, 18, 347. Just for attendance. And I also have a 347, the last two numbers, 80.
That's me, Jadeva Smith.
Sorry?
That's me, Jadeva Smith.
Oh, yeah, thank you, just for attendance. I see Dr. Williams, who was her hand. Do you have a question, Dr. Williams?
Hi, good evening. I don't have a question. My name is Madison Williams. I'm a representative for PSIS 109, one of the schools within the district. I would like to know, well, I sent an email to an email address CB17, I believe it was, but I'm not sure if it's the correct person I should be emailing. I would like to see if there's an opportunity for me to speak on behalf of PS 109 and the outlying community at the next meeting.
Probably
Hey,
send it to me or to Mr. Daly, probably, who is also the chair of the board is here. I can definitely follow up with you, but I think you probably send it to me or to the chair of the board who is here. Mr. Daly, do you want to answer?
Well, hi, Dr. Williams. How you doing? Long time no see. And congratulations. Well, it's long overdue, but congratulations on your position. My question to you is what is it that you want to talk about before I could tell you where to go?
So I would like to talk about a proposal to next to our school building, which is located on East 45th Street and between Glenwood and Farragut Road, there's a New York City's park that is not, it doesn't really get too much use. So, and the playground that our school services students from pre-K through 8th grade, and the playground that is attached to our school is very, very small, and the equipment is not really appropriate for older students, as well as not being accessible for students with disabilities. So I was interested in seeing if we could commandeer the park that is located on the other side of us, which is in New York City's park, but it shares a fire line with the school. And we wanted to, if we were able to commandeer the park, to take out a reso grant or apply for a reso grant so that we could renovate that park so that our students as well as members of the community would be able to use it. So that is what I would like to talk to the board about.
Okay, that's a general board. It covers two areas. One, it covers education, and it does cover this committee as well, the Parks and Beautification as well, to set up a meeting with. If you can do me a favor, you could send Chair Burlott, Chair Antoine will give you her email.
Okay.
My email is just CB17 chairperson. I mean, you could CC me on it. I'm hoping to schedule a meeting with the borough commissioner, and that could be one of the conversations that we have. But it contains both education component and the Parks and Beautification component. So just send it to Chair Antoine, and she'll make sure that I get it as well, or CC me on it.
So I just put my email in the chat, BERL at yahoo.com. You can send me an email and CC the chair of the board.
I have that. Thank you so much. Just to give you a little bit of background, I did meet with the Brooklyn Borough president about it in early October. And he set up a meeting with the Parks Department, but we haven't met since October. At our last meeting, there was some dispute about who actually owns the park in question. The borough president's office said it was a DOE property, but the Parks Department, of course, said it was Parks property. So we're still waiting to see what the resolution to that will be. But that would be the gist. Thank you so much for giving me a couple minutes to speak. I have the email address, and I will definitely send an email to give a little bit more about it and answer any questions that may come up.
Oh, thank you.
Dr. Williams, I missed, your
I'm sorry, I didn't hear after I missed.
Yeah, it's frozen. Mm.
She was having internet problems, her internet. So I don't see her live.
Hold up.
Oh,
So
here
I'm
she's back.
sorry. Yeah, I have so much issue with my internet today. So I'm sorry if I
So I don't know. I'm not feeling well, so I'm gonna leave the meetings. Yolanda Belcher, over and out. Have a good day, everybody.
Okay, good night. Good night, Yolanda. Feel better.
Thank you.
no. Oh my God.
Yeah, I think Berlot is having
Yeah, I have this bad internet. I have this bad internet connections. I'm sorry for that. I would like to ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting. Our next meeting is on February 7th. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
motion to
George, I make a motion to adjourn at 8:55
Yes,
p.m.
thank you. Yes, it's 8:56. Thank you so much. I apologize for that. I don't know what to do with this internet today. We will see each other again on February 7th. But before that, you will hear from us, Miss Barton and myself, because we will send you a bunch of information from this presentation today. It was a pleasure to have you here today, although the end was not that great.
Oh boy.
Okay, have a blessed evening, everyone.
Okay. Good night.
And Happy New Year.
Good night, everyone.
Miss Antoine?
Internet is really acting up tonight.
Yeah.
Frozen.
Good night, everyone.
All right.